to Ukraine. The Ukraine Recovery Conference was happening today. You can see the scene there. We have Rishi Sunak, nice and small in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and the huge Volodymyr Zelensky, who, of course, was holding out the begging bowl once again today. Now we have a couple of little bits of video. Let's just listen to a few seconds of Rishi.
It's clear Russia must pay for the destruction that they've inflicted. So we're working with allies to explore lawful routes to use Russian assets. And on Monday, we published new legislation to allow us to keep sanctions in place until Russia pays up. But beyond that, we must bring to bear a partnership of governments, international financial institutions, and business leaders, all of us here today, to make this happen. The British government will continue to play its full part, and I'm proud that today we're announcing a multi-year commitment to support Ukraine's economy. Over 3 years, we will provide loan guarantees worth $3 billion.
So, Alex, a couple of things to unpack there. First of all, the money that's going is going to be in the form of more loan guarantees, so it's more borrowed money. But this seems to be an attempt to bring the private sector into the funding campaign that governments have been running. So this isn't just about bringing governments together, it's also bringing in what they describe as major conglomerates and international corporations. And the names that they named in their press release today included Virgin, Sanofi, Philips, Hyundai Engineering, Citibank. Those are the key names that were singled out as taking part in this today. So loan guarantees and, more fusion between government and corporate entities, it seems.
Yes, this is corporatism at its finest, isn't it? Such corporations, mega corporations, as you have named, would dearly love to have the ability to sign treaties directly with governments. But sadly for them, they can't. But if they have a tame government or two in their pocket, they can institute a public-private partnership, a global public-private partnership, one might suggest, in Ian Davis's terminology, to work hand in glove with them. So there's no money involved. It's paper. It's loan guarantees, as you say, and all the action is by the corporations. They're behaving as if they could tell Ukrainian governments and Western governments what to do, perhaps because they can in the current arrangements.
Yes, well, it didn't end there because we've got to bring the City of London in. So let's listen to a second little clip here.
And I am delighted to announce today that over 400 businesses from 38 countries with a combined market cap of $4.9 trillion have now signed up. Now, the City of London has a huge amount to offer in their deep and liquid capital markets and world-class finance expertise. So there is no better place to announce today the new London Conference Framework for War Risk Insurance. This is a huge step forward towards helping insurers to underwrite investments into Ukraine, removing one of the biggest barriers and giving investors the confidence they need to act. With this and everything that we do here, we are sending a message that our support on the battlefield and beyond cannot be outlasted, and that Ukraine's incredible spirit will prevail. Now, in a moment, I'll hand over to my friend, President Zelensky. But first, I'd just like to share something that I heard recently.
Now, I left it there because I wasn't going to inflict his little story on everybody, but he went on to tell a nice little story. So it's on the number 10 Twitter feed if you want to watch the whole speech from Rishi. I'm quite sure nobody does, and you'll get the little story. But anyway, Alex, I saw you with your head in your hands there. I wasn't quite sure whether that was sheer dismay or what.
It was mind-boggling at the contradiction in terms of insuring for war risk, Mike. If you insure your home contents, your vehicle, of course, in some countries you have to for certain purposes, it's for fire, theft, and third party. That is, unless you fix it yourself, for which there are stiff legal penalties, these are things that other people will do to you over which you have no control. Companies signing contracts of the kind I've translated for many years will talk about force majeure, natural disasters, and acts of God. Again, out of your hands. A war is not an act of God, even in a theological sense. Humans start wars. If you're touting for Ukraine to sign up on the dotted line for City of London war risk insurance, then massive temptation is there for the war to be engineered, prolonged and protracted so that a generation of Ukrainians pays its annual subscription to the war risk.
I couldn't have put it better. I mean, that's absolutely the case. Now, let's move on then, because during the conference, then Zelensky was speaking to the BBC, and he had this to say: battlefield progress during the counteroffensive has been slower than desired. Well, yes, it has been, and in fact, I just want to end this little segment by putting up this graphic from Il Russo, well, this shows the progress that the Ukrainians have made, because you see this large pink area on screen. That's the Russian-held territory. And just on the top edge of that, you'll see a couple of little, very, very small, lighter pink areas. And those are the areas where it looks like the Ukrainians made some progress, but have had to withdraw. They're not really there anymore. But the land is now effectively a bit of a demilitarized zone. But Alex, these areas are so minuscule by comparison with the territory held by Russia, as it comes to no progress at all, in fact.
Yes, because as Brian was pointing out last time similar maps were shown, these gains are within the fire zone, the dead zone. You know, you can boast that you've taken a village or two and put a nice box around it, but if there's back defences by the Russians, you're still a sitting duck, alas. So there's going to be waves of these Ukrainian troops, very tragically mown down as this offensive continues, I foresee.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's go back to France, in fact, and look at what they're up to with respect to Russia.
Many viewers might recall that Nicolas Sarkozy, as president, had François Fillon as his head of government, his prime minister. Some will know that Fillon then went off and did the same as Gerhard Schröder when he resigned from the chancellorship of Germany. Namely, he went into private business and got very envious and angry comebacks from the political class for doing business with Russian hydrocarbon companies. On the 2nd of May, Mr. Fillon was called to be interviewed by the Parliamentary Inquiry into Foreign Interference in French Democracy. BFM, which is quite a pro-National Front party, and therefore covered this extensively because the Rassemblement National, National Front is the old name, set this committee up to arguably to deflect from accusations that they're pro-Russian. Fillon told them that he wasn't bothered by Russian interference, and one of the key quotations is brought up here by BFM and Radio Monte Carlo reporting on it. He says, if you ask me about foreign interference, oh yes, I've come across it. Most of it came from a friendly country that we call the United States. President Sarkozy and I, as head of government, were eavesdropped on for 5 years by the US NSA. He said there was other espionage of note and concern, Chinese and from several Muslim countries, whipping up sentiment among French Muslims in foreign policy terms. But then he went on to talk about several other things. The NSA issue is not so new because the Germans have made a big noise about it, but he pointed out it applied equally to France. He was more concerned strategically about what America does to Europe. And in the first of two clips, which is Fillon speaking French with an English fairly good auto subtitle going on underneath, he's talking about the disparity there between what's claimed with regard to Russia and America, particularly talking out that back to de Gaulle's time, France was faced with this problem, this reality really, that it shares a landmass with Russia and has to find a modus vivendi with it, whereas America is very far away.
Notamment sur cette question du rapport entre la France et la Russie. On pourrait résumer ses convictions en disant qu'elles sont gaullistes, mais immédiatement, je vois les ricanements, non pas ici naturellement, mais à l'extérieur, arriver en disant que tout ça c'est du passé et que le monde a changé. Et c'est vrai que le monde a changé, que la situation est différente aujourd'hui de celle que nous avons connue. Mais il y a une chose qui n'a pas changé et qui au fond était la base de la vision qui était celle du général de Gaulle en politique étrangère, c'est la géographie. Nous sommes sur le même continent que la Russie. Et une immense partie de la Russie est européenne. On peut aimer, pas aimer, combattre, être en désaccord, et il y a bien des raisons d'être en désaccord avec le régime russe, et pas seulement avec celui-là, mais avec tous ceux que la Russie a connus depuis bien longtemps. Ça n'efface pas cette constatation que la proximité de la Russie et de notre pays et de l'Europe oblige à trouver un mode de relation avec la Russie qui permette d'assurer la paix et la sécurité. Voilà, vous l'avez très bien dit, tout le monde trouve ça normal parce que ça vient de nos amis américains et donc ça fait partie des choses qui sont... c'est dans la nature des choses et ça n'a suscité que 2 ou 3 jours de commentaires et je pense que personne n'a pris de mesures pour sécuriser les communications téléphoniques des membres du gouvernement, par exemple. Le président Sarkozy et moi-même, nous n'avons jamais utilisé autre chose que nos téléphones portables. On nous a donné à un moment des téléphones cryptés qui étaient tellement compliqués à utiliser qu'on les a jamais utilisés. J'avais un moment souhaité qu'on interdise les téléphones dans certaines enceintes, notamment au Conseil des ministres, et je n'avais pas réussi à convaincre. Et donc même au Conseil des ministres, il y a des téléphones, il y avait des téléphones portables, et donc ça veut dire que n'importe qui pouvait écouter n'importe quoi.
So he's saying, like them or loathe them, the Russians are near neighbours, even closer to the Germans and even closer still to the Poles. He didn't add that detail, but he suggests it later. And therefore, if you want to set up a big noise and a talking point about foreign interference so as to tar the French right as Russian collaborators, how ludicrous is that when I said every time that the French cabinet met, the Conseil des Ministres, could we please, ladies and gentlemen, leave our phones outside because the Americans are listening to every word. In the second clip, of course, Fillon is right-wing and oppositionist, but he's also a Euro-integrationist. Fillon said that he envisaged there was a sound economic argument for making the euro a world currency. He concedes that the Chinese will now take that off the dollar in another part of this hearing on the 2nd of May. But he says, for a moment, just concentrating here on what happened when he did a tour of European finance ministers a decade ago, he says they were all amenable to his idea of really hardening the euro into a global reserve currency, a sink currency, until he went to Wolfgang Schäuble in Berlin, who said, "My dear friend, it makes eminent sense, but it's never going to happen." So that clip will follow.
Et on avait bâti un projet. Et j'ai fait le tour des ministres des Finances européens, c'était après 2013 ou 2014. J'ai reçu un accueil relativement poli à peu près partout, sauf en Allemagne. Quand j'ai été présenté à monsieur Schäuble mon projet de faire de l'euro une monnaie internationale, il m'a dit « T'as parfaitement raison, mais on le fera jamais ». Et il m'a dit, on le fera jamais parce que les Américains assurent notre sécurité, nous défendent. Et au fond, je me suis à ce moment-là dit que j'avais pas intégré cette dimension dans le... Et quant à l'idée que l'Europe pourrait exercer une vraie pression sur les États-Unis avec des rétorsions, elle est absolument illusoire, puisque l'Allemagne ne l'acceptera jamais, la Pologne ne l'acceptera jamais, etc. Enfin, en tout cas... à horizon visible.
C'est pratique alors que la législation américaine était assez claire depuis les années 70.
Il y a une immense hypocrisie américaine parce que les entreprises américaines se livrent exactement aux mêmes pratiques. C'est ça le sujet. C'est pour ça que je ne dis pas qu'il ne faut pas lutter contre la corruption. Je dis que c'est pas aux Américains d'imposer leurs règles en matière de corruption aux entreprises européennes.
And that was the second key moment where he had a go at massive American hypocrisy, which he called it in terms, because American extraterritoriality of law, including corporate law, is his bugbear here. He says US companies are infringing in the same ways that French or German conglomerates are, but if it's a French or German conglomerate, with the help of NSA spying, a case will be built and these companies will be prosecuted under US law. So who is the interferer here? One more slide on that, just to remind people that on the very first day of the current phase of the war, shall we say, the 24th of February 2022, it was covered rather waspishly by the French regional press, Ouest France, that Fillon has said that the Russians had a leg to stand on. And so on the very first day, he deplored the Western refusal to understand or to entertain Russian claims on NATO expansion. So he's made himself a very banned person, but he is a former head of government of a very major European country, saying that the interference is not really Russian, it's American.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Now let's move on to health issues.